Yesterday, in Mr. Wen's speech, he mentioned about the transformation of the functionality of the institution. That is to say, in today's society, we should establish a monetary system which is commensurate with today's socio-economic development. That is, allow our general public to be informed, to have the capacity to monitor and supervise the government. Also, in terms of the media, because nowadays we know that society is getting more and more complex, so that the role of the media should be transformed as well, including CCTV, the Central Television of China. The media in China nowadays should have more capacity to supervise, so that the society could be more transparent. The third theme is also mentioned yesterday by Premier Wen, is the rule of law. I think what Premier Wen said is very important. He said that for many years, the greatest problem in terms of the reform is that is the rule of law more important, or is other things more important, the party more important? If the rule of law is more important, then I'm sure that the society will be a better one. If the ruling of law is not important, then the reform might not be successful. So how can we use the rule of law to maintain the order of the society and protect the rights of the vulnerables? We must make sure that the ruling of the law to make sure that the rights of the vulnerable population be maintained, be safeguarded. That is to say, how can we be sure that the rights of the vulnerable population be protected? So that's the three main things that I would like to talk about. And we should establish a commensurate supervision and monetary systems. And then at last, we can have a society under the ruling of law and to achieve a nation under the ruling of law. So I can see that during the meeting between the Premier Wen Jiabao and the business leaders, you have studied very carefully the main points of Premier Wen Jiabao's speech. And now, when we talk about economic planning, and also yesterday we've heard Premier Wen have talked something very important, that is to say, the things that influence Chinese economy is not only some domestic factors, but also include international factors. So could Mr. Zhang give us some briefings, please?
I think as far as China's development is concerned, we emphasize that by 2020 we will have a relatively well-off society, and the 12th five-year plan is the key period for attaining that goal. This includes economic development and social development and cultural development. Just now, we mentioned that in the past development process, we paid a lot of attention to economic development or giving top priority to GDP growth. But so I think that's a misinterpretation of Mr. Deng Xiaoping's principle. Development is the absolute principle. So that's why we want to keep abreast with the change of the time. And after 2003, we put forward the scientific outlook on development. So China's development should be people-centered and coordinated and sustainable development, because in the past we have an imbalance of economic development and social development. Social development lagged behind. So in the next period, including in the period of 12th five-year plan, we need to satisfy people's demand, not only the material demand, but also educational, health, and social security, and other kind of demands. So I feel in the 12th five-year plan, we pay more attention to those social undertakings. Of course, to achieve coordinated socio-economic development, the government system need to be reformed and the government function need to be transformed. We need to build service-oriented government. I think all of these are the top priority for us. China's development China cannot develop without the world, and the world cannot develop without China. This is a kind of cliche, but it is the reflection of the reality. The basic feature for China's past 3 decades development is reform and development, especially since China's entry into WTO in 2001. China has been further integrated into the globalization process, and China's interrelation with the world economy has been strengthened. So when the world economy is in a crisis, it is impossible for China to be immune to the effect. Actually, the international financial crisis broke out in 2008, has a big impact on China's economic development. And now people are discussing the risk of double dip. So China, as the largest developing country in the world and the second largest economy in the world, how should China play its role? I think this is a hot topic. So Premier Wen Jiabao yesterday used 6 Chinese characters to describe the vulnerable and complicated world economy. He said we have confidence, responsibility, and cooperation are most important. I think this is a very good point. As for responsibility, I'd like to elaborate on it a little bit because from last night to today, I heard a lot coverage about the dangerous situation in the Eurozone, and some European scholars even suggest because Greece may have default, so they want to exclude Greece from Eurozone. And some people had a different idea, believing that there should be Euro bonds. And the United States is in a difficult situation, and Japan has met with a tsunami and nuclear crisis. So some people is saying that they hope China will stand up to push the world economic development. I know this is the aspiration of the people, but I think, in my understanding, the responsibility mentioned by President Jiabao means that each country need to shoulder corresponding responsibilities. China, as largest developing country with 1.3 billion population, if we can improve the quality of growth and development in China, then China is responsible for the world recovery and the world economic development. Especially in the 12th five-year plan, we stress the shift from export-driven economic growth to attaching equal importance to import and export, and further opening up China's market. This year, the import grows faster than export, so the trade surplus dropped by 10% over the same period last year. So in the international financial crisis, China will open wider our market to those countries in crisis. This is one aspect. Also, Premier Wen Jiabao talked about the difficulties of Eurozone, and China will buy the European bonds within our capacity. But after all, the economy of China is only 9.5% of the world total, plus the other BRICS countries, and also plus South Africa. The total is less than 18% of the world total, while the United States and Japan and EU account for more than 60% of the world economy. So they need to implement correct policies and shoulder their responsibilities. And also, countries need to cooperate with each other and coordinate in implementing macro economic policies.